Welcome to Season 3 of Beyond Kalidasia, the show that takes you behind the scenes of the Kalidasia universe. I'm Jason, the creator of Legends of Kalidasia, and now Kalidasia Fleet Commander. Throughout this season, I'm going to be talking to you about the process I use to create tabletop games. Back in episode 1, I covered what I call the 3 fundamental forces of tabletop game design. These are 1, having a general concept of what your game is supposed to be about. Second one was the idea is you have to focus on making sure your game is fun to play. It's not something that comes naturally. And the third one was understanding that time, in terms of how long your game is going to take to play, that is your biggest constraint when it comes to tabletop game design. So for this episode, I'm actually going to kind of step away from that a little bit. We'll get back to it later on in the series. But we're going to talk today about what I call an alpha design kit. These are the tools and materials you're going to use to create prototypes of your game so you can go ahead and start testing out your ideas. So let's get started with the tools you're going to be using. Now the first tool you're going to be using is also the coolest and definitely the most expensive. It's called the Rotary Cutting Tool Kit, or some combination of those words. I forget exactly what it is. But the 3-piece kit comes with a really nice kind of rubberish cutting mat. It also has a little grid painted on it, so you can go ahead and line up your cuts really nicely. You got the cutting tool itself, which is a really sharp pizza slice cutting tool kind of a thing. And then finally you have my favorite part, which is a translucent plexiglass polycarbonate-ish, one of those two materials, ruler, which has a grid drawn on it. So now you can go ahead and make really cool straight cuts, angled cuts, and also draw and get really nice clean cuts with this. This is actually probably my most favorite tool to use in the set. It is expensive. Depending on what you get, you're going to be looking upwards of $60. But with careful use of the coupons of some of the major retail chains, you can save a lot of money on that. Now next up is your standard hobby knife. Now granted, this rotary cutting tool thing I just talked about is absolutely awesome and is great for clean, straight cuts, but it's really designed when you want to cut all the way through something. If you want to kind of stop in the middle to make a right angle cut, the rotary cutting tool doesn't really have that level of precision. So that's where your traditional hobby knife comes into play. And of course, you can always use the rubber cutting mat and the really cool translucent ruler with a normal hobby knife. Next up are Sharpies and permanent markers. I mean, everybody loves Sharpies, let's face it, they're fantastic little things. They come in a wide variety of colors, and you can basically draw on just about any surface you really want to. In fact, the only color they don't come in is white, and it's actually right up on Sharpie's website as to why that is, but that's a whole nother topic altogether. They're great at the very beginning for actually creating this kind of prototype boards, cards, stat card layouts, etc. And even later on, when you get into the later stages of game development, they're great for kind of writing over already printed components and when you decide to change stuff later on. If you look at some of the pictures of Kalidasia Fleet Commander up to this point and look carefully, you're actually going to see I've written a few things on some of the cards with Sharpies as I change things later on. Now, as for the colors, like I said, they come in a wide variety of colors, but black and silver are really the two best. So they kind of let you write on both light colored things and dark colored things. Well, you know, the black one on light colored things, and dark colored things you have the silver. So those are my recommendations. Now my alpha design kit doesn't use glue too often, and when we get into the materials section you'll see why that is the case. But when I do need to use glue, I prefer to use spray adhesive. It's a great way to get a nice even coating of glue, and it doesn't seem to alter or kind of mess up the components the way, say, PVA glue does. And frankly, glue sticks just aren't strong enough to hold up the rigors of playtesting. In addition, spray adhesive comes in a variety of different strengths, including a temporary strength if you want to just stick something on for a while and then remove it later. So when you're buying this stuff, be sure to take a look at the label and make sure it's the right kind that you want. And of course, it is a spray paint-like material, so be sure to go ahead and just read the instructions and follow all proper safety procedures with it. With basic tools out of the way, let's talk about materials. And then my favorite one is foam core board. Now, of course, this is the stuff that 3D puzzles are made out of. It's some kind of like styrofoam sandwiched between two pieces of tag board or heavy cardboard, whatever it may be. And this is great for any kind of components that need durability. Game boards are great. Take a piece of foam core board, draw something out with a Sharpie, and bingo, you've got a prototype game board, prototype scoreboard. Anything that requires some durability and doesn't need to be flexible at all. Foam core board is great for that. And as a bonus, this stuff is available everywhere. You can find it at grocery stores as well as, of course, every major art supply store, and it's really cheap. It costs about $3 for a sheet that's a little bit smaller than a 3-foot by 2-foot area. And also sometimes even have kind of a removable adhesive backing if you want to go ahead and glue something down to it. Of course, those are a little bit more expensive, but not by very much. Next up for common materials is tag board. Like foam core board, this stuff is everywhere. Grocery stores, department stores, art supply stores all have it. And it's really cheap, less than $1 for a pretty good size sheet. And if you want to pay a little bit more, you can get kinds that have very hard to see grids on them. So you can go ahead and make your even space components pretty quickly. Now tag board is great for any kind of custom shaped tokens, or if you want some odd shaped playing cards for your game for whatever reason. It's also great for that. Now, tag board is flexible and not very durable. So what I like to do to kind of make it a little bit stronger and last longer is I take 1/8" craft foam, kind of that flexible craft foam you can buy at art supply stores, and use some spray adhesive to glue it onto the back of the tag board. And I can show you how to do this if you want to watch a really old episode of Beyond Kalidasia. I think it's like Season 1, Episode 3. Where I take the Legends of Kalidasia fighter tokens and glue them onto this craft foam, and I'll put a link to that video in the show notes. Similar to tag board is cardstock. Cardstock is not quite as thick as tag board usually, some are, but it's definitely a lot thicker than typical computer paper, but it's designed to be run through many types of desktop printers in case you want to print off your kind of custom tokens as you go along making your game. Now the important thing to note here is that one, cardstock comes in different thicknesses and not all printers can actually use cardstock. If you try to run cardstock through a printer that can't accept it, or you try to run cardstock that's too thick through a printer, you can actually end up damaging your printer. So be sure to check the details of what your printer can and cannot accept before you try to print out cardstock. Computer labels are probably the best material for the alpha design kit process. Why? Because you can print stuff off and literally turn anything into anything. You can stick them on playing cards, get custom cards. You can stick them on little poker chips or bingo tokens to create little custom tokens. And of course, dice. Stick them on a die, you got yourself a custom die if that's what you want to do. Sure, go right ahead. Also, computer labels come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Okay, not really shapes, they're all rectangle, but all sorts of different sizes. And every major office software out there pretty much supports all these different sizes. They're cheap, they're readily available. Office supply stores, probably any kind of department store also sells them. And of course, if you need a size other than what's available, you just cut them down and bingo, there you go. Great way to create custom tokens of all sorts of types. Finally, many games require custom cards, and the best way to build custom cards for your alpha design kit is one, to get some computer labels, and then take a trip down to your local game store. Local game stores will often sell giant boxes of collectible game cards really cheap. Sometimes the cards are as little as 1 penny if you buy them in large enough quantities, and once you stick that computer label on them, they can become whatever you need them to be. Now the big advantage of computer labels is that they do two things. Well, they don't do two things actually. They don't add any thickness to the card, and they don't compromise the flexibility of the card. Oftentimes you try to glue some new surface onto a collectible game card, it's going to bow out the card and make it very rigid. So you can't shuffle them, you can't stack them as well, and computer labels, they just won't do that. So if you need some excellent ways of creating cards for your alpha design kit, this is a great way to do it. There you go. These tools and materials should put you in the right direction for creating a bunch of test copies of your game, allowing you to figure out what ideas work and what ideas don't. If you have any questions for me and want me to explain some things some more, send me an email at kalidasiagames@gmail.com. I'll be happy to answer it. And if you have any questions about the Kalidasia universe, or you want to learn more about Legends of Kalidasia or Kalidasia Fleet Commander, you can head over to kalidasia.com and you can find everything you want over there, including how to buy the game, as well as a free starter kit for Legends of Kalidasia. So once again, I'm Jason. Thanks for watching.